All right. Evidence is what we're going to be going over in this lesson and all of this playlist, really. Specifically on slide number 5, it says, I can distinguish between relevant and irrelevant evidence. And in your activating schema, you all define relevant and irrelevant. Pretty much just like you all say it, like you are so irrelevant. You all say those things all the time. But if you are telling somebody they're irrelevant, that means like that's a your whatever argument, whatever thing you're saying right now doesn't matter, right? Because it doesn't fit in the situation we're in. It's the same with evidence. So if it's relevant evidence, it means it's relevant to your claim. And if it's irrelevant evidence, then it's irrelevant to your claim. Again, we talked about this when we were talking about relevant and irrelevant logical reasoning, logical subclaims. If it doesn't make sense to go with your claim, then it's probably not right. So if we're talking about whether cats and dogs are better or whatever, and then you suddenly give me a statistic about babies, that's probably not a good piece of evidence. Do we see where that could potentially not be good? So, evidence is any example that proves a claim slash statement or slash idea. It is straight facts. When we are talking about evidence, it is the facts. Giving someone else opinion can happen specifically, but only if it supports your claim and only if that person is credible. So you're going to be watching a video down on lesson 3 talking about credible people and giving information about people who are credible to your argument. So if you are talking about baking and you want to use Miss Paula Deen or Martha Stewart, I don't know, as a quote for your argument, those would probably be good. Okay. But if you like went and asked like Mike Tyson and you got some random quote from Mike Tyson, that's not a credible quote from someone. So make sure that you use credible testimony, credible sources, yada, yada. Evidence could be facts. So things that you get like from a news article. Again, we're going to talk about credibility of sources. So that'll be lesson 3. It could be statistic. Like you find that you are arguing for corporal punishment. That was one of the ones that we just did at the beginning of January. You're arguing against corporal punishment. You could tell me a statistic in there would be something like 90% of schools don't use corporal punishment anymore, like whatever the fact was in our pro-con article. Quotes from the text. If you are arguing something, or just like we do at CER when we're in reading, if you're doing CER in reading and you are trying to say, give an answer to a question, and you use in the text, it says, this quote shows, those are CER, that will be quote from the text. Or if we're doing an on demand or something, and you have to read 2 passages, then you could quote from those texts. A paraphrase summary. If you want to quote or just use information from an entire article, you could paraphrase the summary, which means just put it kind of into your own words, just like a quick summary of something, like maybe 1 or 2 sentences that talk about whatever you read. Summary of a case study. Case studies are huge. They do not happen quickly. They are something that happens usually over a huge time span. So a summary of a case study would be literally figure out how to do it within max 3 sentences kind of thing. And I talked about credible testimony already. So when selecting your evidence, you will need to choose evidence that connects to your overall claim and subclaims. Excuse me. And then choose enough evidence to support your overall claim and subclaim. So if you don't choose enough evidence and you don't choose evidence that connects to your claims and subclaims, then either one of those things are not going to be good for you. Again, we've already talked about connectivity to your claims and subclaims. That's going to be you're arguing something for baking, and you use so and so who's a Guy Ferrari. You can use him, but when you start using people like going to ask, I don't know. I can only think of political candidates at this moment. You go ask Morgan Wallen. You all know I love Morgan Wallen. You go ask Morgan Wallen about baking. I'm going to tell you that that does not connect and that's not a credible source. So make sure that you are using credible sources.